Features.
Hello and welcome to the Boxing Features Review Show, the brand new series where every week I'll be taking a look at all the big fights that happened around the world over the past weekend. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for all the Boxing Features content, including the preview show that comes every Friday at 12 PM and the review show that comes every following Monday at 7 PM. Now, without further ado, let's get to the fights.
Boxing Features.
We'll start off with Friday's show, the MTK show in Bolton, and it was headlined by Sean McComb versus Gavin Guinn for the Commonwealth Lightweight title. It really impressed me. I'd say this is probably the biggest shock of the weekend in the fact that it was just a fantastic fight. I am not going to lie, I didn't know a huge amount about Sean McComb before, and I didn't know that much about Gavin Guinn. I only saw the two fights that he lost previously, and it was a big case of judging a fighter by his losses rather than his wins. Gavin Guinn was superb. Honestly, fantastic. He probably lost the first round. Well, he did it on my card, and McComb just started off with a lot of clean work. He looked really sharp, McComb, but then he got a cut above his right eye after the first round, and after that, Guinn just began to dog him, really dog him, coming on the inside, rough and tumble, hurting McComb early. He hurt him early, and after what seemed like back and forth action for 7 rounds, oh my God, Gavin Guinn got the biggest cut at the back of his head. His whole back was covered in blood. It was a mane of blood, honestly. I was enthralled by this fight. I absolutely loved it. But after 7 hard rounds of just back and forth action, Sean McComb turned his back. It was too much for him. It was, and I don't blame him. I honestly don't blame him. Some people will say quit. Well, on paper he did quit, but no one could keep up with that pace that Gavin Guinn was setting. It was unreal. McComb tried to slow down Gavin Guinn probably from round 2, but he just couldn't. I gave McComb 2 of the 6 completed rounds, and I loved this fight. I really did love this fight, and it was a great way to start a great weekend of boxing.
Boxing Features.
Then next, I'm going to talk about the Matchroom Show at the Wembley Bubble on Saturday, and I'm going to talk about this whole card. There was 5 fights on the card, and all of them was fantastic in their own way. I just want to talk about the show as a whole. Eddie and Matchroom got the pacing of this show perfect. Before the show, I was a bit sceptical. I didn't understand why Jordan Gill was opening the show, and then Johnny Fisher, and then Robbie Davis. I didn't understand that, really, but I just got it. The fights, it was perfect. Perfectly placed. We had the all-out action learning fight for Gill, which I'll start talking about in a minute. Then we had the heavyweight debut of Johnny Fisher, which is always exciting. And then we just had a bit of a slug war, great fight in Robbie Davis Jr. before we got to the co-feature in Florian MARKU versus Ryan Charlton, and the main event in David Avanesyan versus Josh Kelly. It was just a fantastic show from top to bottom. And we'll start off by talking about Jordan Gill versus Juarez.
Boxing Features.
The first thing I want to say is how mean Juarez looked. He looked scary coming to the ring. He looked like he was immense, and he was immense. He brought an absolute carnage to Jordan Gill, and Jordan Gill boxed beautifully, absolutely beautifully. Gill's upper body movement was second to none. He turned Juarez fantastically, pipping him with some lovely jabs, and at some points in the fight, he showed Juarez that he could get his attention on the inside, which I really appreciated from Gill. He showed a lot on Saturday night. By the latter stages of the fight, he was tiring, but who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Because Juarez was the type of Mexican fighter who just didn't stop for 10 rounds straight. He didn't stop trying to work Gill on the inside. It was absolutely fantastic to watch, and I don't think Gill could get a better learning fight than that. He learned how to cope with the pressure. It was brilliant. I think the Reece Bellotti fight earlier on in the last year was good. It was a good name for Gill, but Gill, it seemed like he was comfortable. Bellotti, we knew, had that one-punch knockout power, but he wasn't applying the pressure for the whole fight like Juarez was. Juarez did not stop, and I absolutely loved that. I scored the fight 96-94 to Gill. I think the judges had it a bit wider if we just look. One judge gave it 98-92, 98-93, and the final judge gave it 96-94, agreeing with me. Some of that, okay, maybe 98-92 is a bit wide, 4 rounds, but it depends how you judge this type of fight, because some of the rounds it looked like that Juarez's work rate was outdoing Gill, but I just think Gill seemed to be in control of the whole fight, apart from a couple of rounds. He boxed beautifully, and I really don't know where Gill's going to go from now, because I think it's really going to be tough to find a good fight for Gill, and he needs to be moved up because he's just a fantastic talent. I know he had the setback in Tinoco a couple of years ago, but he's come on leaps and bounds since then, and I can't wait to see what is next for Jordan Gill.
Boxing features.
Next, we had the pro debut of the Romford Bull, Johnny Fisher, heavyweight from Romford, and as I said in the preview show, that he trains about 5 minutes from where I live, so I'm really looking forward to following his career. He presented himself fabulously all week in the bubble, and really impressive debut, I must admit. So it was a first round KO stoppage for Fisher. He hit Gordon with some chopping right hand canters that I was really impressed with, and I was really impressed with his footwork, the way he moved around the ring. The first minute he was rushing a bit, he was headhunting, which you can't blame him for. It's his first fight, experience wise, I'm not bothered. But after that first minute, this is what really impressed me. He just sat back, lovely footwork, lovely movement, and let the punches come naturally, and those punches were power punches. Then he stepped back a bit, counter right, step back a bit, counter right. They was getting more powerful, and they was having some serious effect on Gordon, and eventually he was knocked down twice, and after Ian John Lewis, the referee, took a serious look at him after the second knockdown, I think he was going to let the fight go on, then he looked in his eyes and thought, no, and it was perfect stoppage in my opinion. Well done Ian John Lewis, and fantastic debut for the Romford Bull, Johnny Fisher.
Boxing features.
Next on the Matchroom Show, we had Robbie Davis Jr. versus Valenzuela, and this was arguably fight of the night. I really enjoyed this one. Both fighters started the fight looking incredibly sharp. Sharp 1-2s from Valenzuela from the start, really. He looked really fast. His hand speed was immense. And I was impressed by Valenzuela from the start, really. I think he clearly won the first 3 rounds, and he knocked Robbie Davis Jr. down at the end of the third with a big right hook. And then it was really interesting. In between the third and fourth round, Robbie Davis Jr. and Dominic Ingle. Dominic Ingle hasn't been training Robbie Davis for long, remember. They had a bit of a disagreement in the corner, which you never really like to see happening. But it was really interesting, because it was all about whether Robbie Davis Jr. should be orthodox or southpaw. And Brendan Ingle was obviously under the impression that he needed to be southpaw, because he switched from orthodox to southpaw really early on in the fight. And after being knocked down in the third, I just think Robbie Davis was really nervous fighting southpaw. Obviously, he's a natural orthodox fighter, but Brendan was like, no, you need to listen to me. Come on, you're fighting southpaw, which is kind of the Ingle way. They like to switch a lot, and it just made for a really interesting fight. And I don't know, personally, I don't think that Robbie Davis will be with Brendan Ingle for much longer after this fight. I just think he wasn't comfortable fighting southpaw, and you could tell that because every time he was throwing the left hand, he was susceptible for punches. He was so susceptible for counters, and you could tell he wanted to go orthodox, but he was listening to his trainer, which well done, but it's a hard one. It is a really hard one. I was thinking that because on the Sky show, there was tweets coming in from boxers, some saying like, you need to go to orthodox, but you don't want to disobey your trainer. And it was just an interesting fight. I think that parts of the fight, maybe Robbie Davis looked like he was turning it around, but then as he looked like he turned it around, Valenzuela had a fantastic round with loads of counters. Valenzuela had a point deducted in the fourth for hitting after the break, and then Davis began to find some success in the fifth, but then it was just every time you thought Davis was turning the fight around, Valenzuela come back better, and it was tough. It was a tough watch for Robbie Davis Jr. fans, which I am. I am a Robbie Davis Jr. fan, and it was close. I knew it was going to be close. I personally had the fight 96-92 to Valenzuela, which is wider than the judges had it. The judges had it 94-94, 96-95 and 96-95, which I don't think you can argue with. Maybe, I don't know about the draw because some of the rounds were close, but for me, the way I judge fights, and I'm not a licensed judge or referee, this is just a fan talking here, I personally believe that Valenzuela was nicking a lot of the close rounds. But it was a great fight. It was a really good fight, just Mexican coming forward. And it was really interesting to see Robbie Davis trying to react to Valenzuela, but I just feel like he fell a little bit short overall.
Boxing features.
Next, we had the co-feature, and it was Ryan Charlton versus Florian Marku. And I'd said in the preview show that this was probably the fight I was most excited for. Obviously, the main event was special, but it just really intrigued me, this fight, and I must admit I was shocked. I was really shocked. Just before the fight, I actually thought that Ryan Charlton was going to win, one way or another. I didn't know whether it was going to be on points or by stoppage. I was leaning towards a late stoppage, but Florian Marku looked so sharp from the start. I've never seen him look so sharp, and he really rose to the occasion, Florian Marku. The jab was fantastic from the start from Florian Marku. Marku was actually talking to Charlton quite a lot, which was it was getting under Charlton's skin. You could really tell that Charlton was beginning to get frustrated, but then at the same time he managed to step back, compose himself, and then Marku just was showing his class. He, as I said, he shocked me. I was not expecting this from Marku. And then I gave Marku the first two rounds clearly won the first two rounds. I think Charlton was trying to aggress. He was probably on the front foot, but Marku was happy to sit back, pip that jab. Classy work. And then the third round, there was some back and forth action. That's especially towards the end of the third round, but I still gave it to Marku. And then Charlton was heavily wobbled at the end of the fourth. That was immense, and he was saved by the bell, in my opinion, in the fourth. And then fifth round, great round. They fought fire with fire, back and forth action. Absolutely loved that fifth round. But it just seemed like Marku had a better idea of how to pace these rounds. It looked like he could go longer, and he was showing his class, he was showing his boxing acumen. They were, as I said in the preview show as well, that he hasn't got that one-punch knockout power, but he hits with a lot of heavy punches, and that is exactly what he done. But some of the time he was showboating a bit, which Johnny Nelson mentioned on the broadcast, which I agree with what Johnny was saying. Then after, when Marku looked like he was really dominating, there was a huge left hook in the sixth round from Ryan Charlton that put Florian Marku down. And that shot me. I was on my feet. I was so excited. As I said, I thought Ryan Charlton was going to win. I didn't know how he was going to do it, but Florian Marku, fair play to him. He got up, and then there was a great round in the 7th. I think Ryan Charlton wanted to try and get him out because Charlton was knackered by the end of it. Then body shots were coming in the later parts of the 7th. Marku was now unloading on Charlton. It all got a little bit too much for Charlton, and fair play to Ryland Charlton's corner. They threw the towel in at the end of the 7th. But what an effort from Ryland Charlton. Take away nothing from the kid. He performed to the best of his ability. Couldn't do anything more. Florian Marku was just a hell of a lot better than certainly I expected on the night. And I'm really interested to see where Florian Marku goes from now. He was calling out Conor Benn, who was on Sky. I don't think that fight's going to happen. It may happen in a couple of years down the line, but I feel like Conor Benn's that level above now, and he's looking to move up. He don't want to move down to Florian Marku's level, but it's a fight I'd love to see. I would really like to see that fight, maybe in a couple of years' time. If they both carry on progressing, who's to say it couldn't be for a world title? But yeah, brilliant co-feature. Now on to the main event.
Boxing features.
Main event time. David Avanesyan versus Josh Kelly for the European welterweight title. Didn't fail to impress. It certainly lived up to the expectations. 4th time lucky. It finally happened. 2 years in the making. And wow. It was certainly something, wasn't it? It was certainly something. A whole narrative occurred in the first round alone. It went from a really cagey fight starting, some slick jabs from Josh Kelly, and then it just went to electric from Kelly. Kelly was moving in and out, mid to close range, using his jab beautifully. Beautiful boxing from Josh Kelly. I've never seen so beautiful boxing from Josh Kelly. He looked fantastic. He really did look good, classy, in range. I was really impressed. And after the first round, I just thought, wow, Kelly looks brilliant. And then the next round, Kelly looked good. He actually rocked Avanesyan with a big left hook, and it shocked Avanesyan. He wobbled back to the ropes, and Avanesyan managed to compose himself pretty quickly. And then you go into the 3rd round, the 4th round, and Kelly looks good. By this time, he's got a huge gash above his ear at the top of the back of the head type thing, and it clearly had an effect on Kelly. Eddie Earn mentioned that after the fight, and you could tell that whilst he was still showing his class, Avanesyan, round by round, was closing that distance, making things horrible for Kelly, landing some of those power punches. We knew how much power David Avanesyan had. And then we head into the 6th round. Okay, so we're going into the 6th round. By this time, I've got Kelly winning every single round. There's an argument for the 5th going to Avanesyan, I believe, but I've gave every round to Kelly. But every round has got closer. Every round, Avanesyan has got that bit more ferocious. He's seen the mistakes that Kelly is making. He can see that Kelly is tiring fast, and that is slightly concerning. How fast Kelly tired, and there's been a lot of talk since the fight about his weight, whether you think he should move up because he's a huge welterweight, and moving to super welter. I think that's where he goes from here. I do think that is where he goes, but we're heading into this 6th round, and Avanesyan comes out fast. Kelly looks like he's shocked at the pace, but he's still in there. He's coping. Throwing the jabs. Bit of toe-to-toe action. And then Josh Kelly touches down in the 6th round. He was getting closer, and he actually touches down, right? With seconds to go in the 6th round, David Avanesyan throws a barrage of punches. And they were brutal. There's no two ways about it. They were brutal. Body shots, left hooks, everything was coming in. And Adam Booth throws in the towel. Fight's over. David Avanesyan successfully defends his title for the 3rd time. And now he can move on. But what a fight. I'm glad the fight's happened. I'm obviously gutted that our boy Josh Kelly has lost. He's lost his undefeated record. But what a great fight. What a great fight. And fantastic decision from Adam Booth to throw in the towel. Really respect that. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk over the past week about whether Josh Warrington's dad should have thrown in the towel. I'm not here to judge whether someone should throw in the towel or not, but we had two absolute warriors in Ryan Charlton and Josh Kelly who both had the towel thrown in for them tonight. So I think consciously or subconsciously that had an effect. So just really good, really good. I think Josh Kelly can bounce back, as I said, probably moving up to Super Welter. But congratulations, David Avanesyan, Neil Marsh, all the team, thoroughly deserved. And I really want to see David Avanesyan in a big fight now. He's got the power, he's got the hand speed. He just looks like he's more of a seasoned professional to when he fought Lamont Peterson, and I'm just looking forward to seeing where David Avanesyan goes from now. I think he's 32. He's still got a couple more years left in him, and that just tops off of what was a fantastic night on Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Show at Wembley, and I just can't wait for more of these shows. I think that could be the best Matchroom post-lockdown show. I'm trying to think. Some of the fight camp shows were brilliant, but just for entertainment-wise, I think that nailed it. And as I said before, the pacing nailed it. So well done, Eddie, and well done, Matchroom.
Boxing features.
Very, very quickly, I'm just going to talk about Fyodor Chudinov versus Isaac Chalemba. I'll be honest, I really struggled to find the full fight online. There wasn't no UK broadcasters, which I wasn't surprised about. So I wasn't actually able to watch the whole fight, but I watched bits of it. And it was a close fight, really close fight, and it ended up being a split draw. Probably from what I've seen of the fight. I've probably seen 30 to 40% of the fight. Chudinov aggressing like he usually does with the jab, but on the back foot, Isaac Chalemba come on some great combinations. Neither fight was hurt, and it was a great fight. And I suppose that would be a good result for Isaac Chalemba, with Chudinov being the favourite. That's his first dent on his record since his loss to George Groves way back in, I think, 2017. I don't know, will there be a rematch, or will both fighters just agree to move on? It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, it was a close fight, and from what I've seen and from what I've read online, is that a draw was probably the right thing for both fighters.
Boxing features.
Okay, so we move over to the US, and going to talk about two shows over there. As I mentioned in the preview show, there was a big PBC show and a big Top Rank show over the weekend. And first of all, we're going to talk about the co-feature on the PBC show, and it was Otto Wallin versus Dominic Breazeale. And I mentioned in the preview show that it just really interested me, this one, because we didn't know where they were at. We didn't know at what exact level they were as fighters, because they'd fought at good, probably, like, decent heavyweights, and then they'd jumped up to elite level in Otto Wallin versus Tyson Fury in September of 2019, and then Dominic Breazeale versus Anthony Joshua way back in, I think, what was that, 2016, 2017, and then his fight against Deontay Wilder in, what was that, I think that was probably 2019, yeah, it was early 2019, wasn't it? And they haven't fought anyone in between that, so they haven't fought anyone just under that elite level yet, so they haven't fought like the likes of Dillian Whyte, Luis Ortiz, I suppose you could put Robert Helenius in that little bubble there. Joseph Parker fighting this weekend, actually. So it was a great crossroads fight for the both of them to see where they were at, and one fighter really impressed me. one of them really didn't impress me, to put it lightly. Otto Wallin was fantastic from start to finish. Brilliant. Just moving around the ring, looked really comfortable in there against the heavy-hitting puncher that is Dominic Brazile, but it just looked like Brazile was there just to land that one haymaker. He looked slow, he looked flat-footed, and you wonder how much of an effect the Deontay Wilder knockout had on him, because he didn't look like anywhere near the fighter he even was against Anthony Joshua, and it's hard. It's really hard, but he's getting on a bit now. After that fight, I think he needs to probably take a step back and look at his future in the sport, but taking nothing away from Otto Wallin. Otto Wallin dealt with the possibility of that one power punch fantastically. He countered on the outside brilliantly, and he convincingly won. It went the distance. It didn't ever look like he was in trouble, really. But every time he was punishing Brazile. Punishing. And that is the sort of fight I like, especially from heavyweights. He was moving around the ring really well. And I want to see him move on quickly. I want to see Otto Wallin move forward. I don't want to see him take a step back. I want to see him fighting the likes of Luis Ortiz, Robert Helenius. We just look at the PBC roster, the heavyweights. They've got some good heavyweights. They've obviously got the Luis Ortiz, the Robert Helenius, the Charles Martins. And then maybe, if he beats one of them guys, he can step up and fight possibly Andy Ruiz or Deontay Wilder. There's no limits to Otto Wallin yet, because we don't know how good he is. Obviously, he put a fantastic effort against Tyson Fury, and it makes the Tyson Fury win look better, because obviously no one really knew Otto Wallin before the Tyson Fury fight, and the terrible cut on Tyson Fury early on in that fight kind of limited Fury, so it weren't the best Fury performance. Obviously, Fury still won, but Fury's probably, in my opinion, the best heavyweight in the world. So I'm really excited for what's next for Otto Wallin. Really excited.
Boxing features.
Next up, it was the main event of that PBC card, and it was Adrian Broner's comeback fight against Santiago, Puerto Rican, and wow, I weren't expecting that. I just thought Santiago was going to be just a light touch kind of to get Broner back into winning ways after being so inactive recently. He hadn't fought since January of 2019, I want to say, against Manny Pacquiao when he lost. And I wasn't impressed by Broner, really. I weren't that impressed. I think he's lost a lot of that explosiveness and some of that power he had early on in his career. That's moving up the weight divisions, though, so fair enough. But he just looked a bit gun-shy, especially in the start of the fight. Just looking at my card here, it went the distance. I'm just looking, because it was interesting to score this fight, actually, because it was close. But then Santiago, the Puerto Rican, he was aggressing quite a lot. And for me, he won a lot of those rounds. And the judges disagreed with me. And but the commentary that night, I think, agreed with me, because they was giving Santiago a lot of the rounds. And we just looked. So there was a slow feeling out process in the first two rounds. But I think the jab won it for Broner. So I gave Broner the first two rounds. Just look at my card here, and but it was clear early on that Broner just simply didn't have enough output. And as the rounds went on, Santiago, who had never been in a fight of this caliber before, began to grow in confidence, and then he began to release his best shot, which was clearly that body shot, landing some big body shots, and it just made for a really intriguing fight to watch. It weren't the most exciting fight to watch in the world. It weren't like one of those iconic fights. There weren't a lot of output, but it was just interesting to see Adrian Broner and where he is. Obviously, we've seen his weight loss. He didn't make the super lightweight 140. So both of them agreed beforehand to put the fight at welter. And I don't know. I just feel like Broner's lost so much, and I don't want to say it, but he's kind of a shadow of the fighter he once was, and I hope he proved me wrong, because I don't like to see fighters decline. I know a lot of people hate Adrian Broner, a lot of people love Adrian Broner, but as I said in the preview show, he's good for the sport, and it was clear through the mid-rounds, Broner switches off. He has a good couple of rounds, he ups that output a little. He still don't throw that right a lot. He needs to throw his right hand more, I think. And but Santiago had a point deducted in the after the fourth round because he hit Broner after the bell, which was probably the most exciting part of the fight. They both hit each other after the bell, but Santiago's was quite considerably after the bell. But the referee dealt with it quite comfortably. He said, "Come on, respect." Right, and it was strange. It was strange just to see Broner, Santiago, and again, we're judging Santiago by his resume. Santiago has never fought anyone like Broner, and he may be a really fantastic fighter. We don't know, but Broner just was nowhere near his old self, and at the end of a very close fight, I gave Broner the fight by 1 point. I had scored it 114 to 113, but the judges gave it a lot wider in some cases. 115 to 112, 116 to 111, and 117 to 110. And those last two, 116 to 111 and 117 to 110, are far too wide for me. I don't know how they could possibly come to that. I know a lot of the rounds were close, but you got to look at that and wonder. You have got to look at it and wonder. There's been a lot of criticism from the UK judges recently about our judging, but look at that, and that's not good, is it? That's really not good.
Boxing features.
So, the last fight I'm going to be talking about this week, I said in the preview show that I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Fight of the Year candidate. It probably wasn't a Fight of the Year candidate, but it was probably Knockout of the Year candidate. It will surprise me if it doesn't get Knockout of the Year, and we're only in February. One of the heaviest knockouts I've seen. It wasn't out of nowhere, it was coming, you could see it was coming, but Oscar Valdez, the most brutal of left hooks to BERCHELT in the latter it was on the bell of round 10. Wow, I'll talk about the fight here. This was unbelievable. I knew going into the fight the game plans were going to play a big part in the fight. Really tense, edgy start. BERCHELT was trying to get that long jab off. He had the height and reach advantage, but it was clear that Valdez just had the speed, he had the footwork, and he had the knowledge, which was a big part in the fight. He knew when to come in. Started off a little bit reckless, but I still think Valdez won the first round, and then I think he won the second round. I think he won the third round. He definitely won the fourth round because he actually knocked BERCHELT down. It was the fight of the left hook. We knew BERCHELT was so susceptible to that left hook, and it makes you wonder the fight, what was going through BERCHELT's head, because he was still so susceptible to that left hook like he's been throughout his career. But Oscar Valdez's biggest weapon is his left hook. It was the fight of the left hook, and it was clear from round 2 onwards that the left hook was destroying BERCHELT. Every time you thought BERCHELT was coming into it, Oscar Valdez, usually a left hook, would stun BERCHELT again. It was amazing. I didn't expect this. I thought he was going to be nip and tuck, back and forth, let's go, war, Mexican style. Oscar Valdez bossed it. Oscar Valdez bossed a world champion of years. BERCHELT was coming towards Julio Cesar Chavez's record of most title defences, and Oscar Valdez made him look like nothing. You could tell BERCHELT's quality was there, but I just think Valdez was on another level. It just was one of those nights where it clicked for him. Everything clicked, Valdez. His footwork, moving in and out, closing that distance, mid to short range. Absolutely brilliant. And then, at the end of the 10th round, after wobbling BERCHELT, which feels like throughout the fight, probably from the second round, like I said. As I said, BERCHELT was coming into it. I gave BERCHELT 1 round of the 9 full rounds. I think there was another knockdown in round 9, I believe, and at the end of the 10th, wow, I'm speechless talking about this, trying to talk about this. It was kind of like BERCHELT was coming forward. BERCHELT was trying to jab. BERCHELT was swinging, really, because he was fighting on instinct from about round 7. So what a warrior. You can't take anything away from BERCHELT. It was absolutely brilliant. It was, I couldn't even imagine fighting like that. But then, as he was coming forward, he was swinging. Valdez moved and hit BERCHELT with the most perfect left hook you will ever see. It was like all of those fantastic left hook in the 9 rounds previous were all practicing for this one left hook that left BERCHELT out cold, out on his front. They quickly turned him over. The fight was over. As I say, this was on the bell. This was on the bell for the end of the 10th round. It was about to finish. Going into the 11th, but no, it was worrying. It was worrying. Obviously, BERCHELT woke up with a crowd around him, and honestly, I was worried for BERCHELT. But it was one of the best knockouts I've seen in a very, very long time. It's got to be up there with Povetkin's uppercut against Dillian Whyte last year, and Gervonta Davis against Leo Santa Cruz, but this one was different because we kind of saw it coming because Valdez was winning the rounds comfortably, like I said, and just beating down BERCHELT, really. But it was just in that fashion. No one expected it. It was like in slow motion. It was like the whole world stopped for this left hook. And at the end of the year, I'm sure I'll be saying that was the knockout of the year. Wow. Honestly, what a weekend of boxing from top to bottom, all the way down at the MTK show on Friday night. As I said, that surprised me. It was a fantastic fight. Then we look at this WBC title fight in BERCHELT and Valdez. Great weekend of boxing. Make sure you join me next Friday for the preview show. Gutted about Carl Frampton pulling out of his fight with a hand injury. Suffers from hand injuries quite a lot now, does Frampton. Apparently the fight's being rescheduled for only a few weeks' time in Dubai. That's what we're hearing. But still some great fights next week. And it is culminating in yours truly, Canelo Alvarez against Avni Yildirim. Make sure you're on Boxing Features. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like this for all content, boxing. And we'll talk about all the great fights on Friday's preview show. Make sure you're there. Thank you for watching once again, Boxing Features.
Boxing Features.